Like all good stories, this one starts with the Scholastic Book Fair. The year is 2009, and I'm eager to get my hands on something sinister. At the time, I was very interested in Bigfoot and UFOs. Luckily, or perhaps unluckily for me, I picked up a book titled Cryptids and Other Creepy Creatures, written by John D. Wright. The book begins with a table of contents with 6 headers. The headers are as follows: creatures from the deep, Yeti, Bigfoot, and other giants, goblins, gremlins, and goatman, wildcats, birds, and bats, ghosts and ghouls, and the unexplained. The big reason why this book still stands out to me, and after going through Reddit, many others, is because of the illustrations. Illustrator Mike Moran mixes mediums to create terror in this book. Let's use this illustration of Kangamato as an example. This photo is located on the page previous to the table of contents in the front of the book. As you can see, Mike uses a photograph of an actual person, the archaeologist, and juxtaposes it against a fabricated backdrop. On top of this, a computer-generated Kangamato can be seen flying just above the archaeologist. This mix of actual photographs and computer-generated images will be the overarching theme throughout all of the illustrations in this book. In some of the illustrations, what we get is a childhood glimpse into a new phenomenon called the Uncanny Valley. Think about television shows like SpongeBob or Courage the Cowardly Dog. These shows use 2D animation, but in some instances will either use live action footage or computer generated images in addition to the 2D for stylistic or thematic purposes. The result can often be very jarring for a childhood audience who are unable to decipher the difference. Most of the illustrations in this book, like Kangamato, didn't really bother me. However, every once in a while, I would stumble across one that I found unsettling. Take this photo of the Hopkinsville Goblins. Here we can see a woman brandishing a rifle as she stares at the window with concern. Unbeknownst to her, just above her head is a naked, pale humanoid with glowing blue eyes. And oddly enough, the hand reaching out to her, which is the humanoid's left, is mistaken with its right. Look at the way the thumb is facing. When it comes to this photograph, it almost looks as if the face of the woman could belong to someone in a photograph, but the hair looks as if it has been digitally replaced. Look at the way the bangs sit on the forehead. There is a clear separation of the two. Similarly, the humanoid has a digitally rendered face, but if you told me that the eyes were taken from a literal source like a person or an animal, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm going to take the opportunity now to mention the layout of information in this book. Each cryptid or creature has a breakdown of their history. At the very bottom of the page, we are given a location of where in the world our creature lives. And finally, next to that, we have 3 bullet points of did you know type information. As you can see, in addition to the full page illustration on the left, we are also given a smaller illustration on the right. I must say, as a child, this photo haunted me more than the previous. Having the humanoid's big blue eyes staring directly at me deeply unsettled me. I remember seeing this image and being unable to sleep the night after. I ended up silently crawling in the dark towards my parents' bedroom and sleeping on the floor next to my mom because I was so afraid. Keep this image in mind. Moving forward, we will see that Mike has a habit of reusing images throughout this book. By this point, as a child, I flipped through each page slowly and with caution, afraid of what I might see on the next spread. This photograph of the Jersey Devil was the next to stick out in my mind. The juxtaposition of its bat arms with its horse-like head lashing out towards me was enough to burn itself into my brain. Not to mention, given my childhood home in Pennsylvania, New Jersey wasn't too far away. Therefore, the possibility of running into this creature while in the woods became a likely reality. The illustration of the chupacabra is another one that stands out as highly uncanny. In the foreground, we have a photograph of two legitimate goats on a dirt road. Behind them stands the tall chupacabra, coming towards them on two legs. It is reptilian in nature. Its sharp teeth and yellow eyes stare at the goats with a hunger that can only be satiated by their blood. I now want to introduce you to the monster of Glamis Castle. This is a full-scale illustration from Mr. Mike Moran. From it, we can gather that beneath the castle lives a disfigured man with a very large head. John Wright paints us the picture of this tragic figure very elegantly. Glamis Castle is said to be one of the most haunted castles in Scotland. One of its saddest stories concerns a hideously deformed family member who was locked up his entire life in a secret room measuring only 10 by 15 feet. Outsiders were told that he died within days of birth, otherwise the firstborn son would have inherited the castle. The monster was Thomas Bowes Lion, who should have become Lord Glamis. He was described as being an enormous flabby egg because his hairy, deformed body lacked a neck and had tiny limbs. A trusted servant pushed his meals through an iron grate in his door and is said to have walked him along the battlements on dark nights. Rumor said that he was exceptionally strong and lived for more than 100 years. Nobody knows how he died, and no tombstone marks his grave. A boarded door concealed the awful secret within the splendid Glamis Castle. Another ghost is that of the 15th century Lord of Glamis, who refused to stop playing cards when the Sabbath arrived and is now doomed to play forever in the secret room. Also, often seen as the ghost of a small boy who sits on a stone seat. Castle historians believe this is the spirit of an 18th century servant boy who had been badly treated. An unknown ghost is a woman with no tongue who looks out from a bar window of the castle. In the early 1900s, a workman accidentally broke through a wall into a passage that led to the secret room. He explored the dismal chamber and became deeply distressed. After questioning the workman, the Earl stopped his renovation work and paid him thousands of pounds to keep silent and to emigrate to Australia. While the other illustrations struck a chord with me due to their outwardly horrifying nature, the monster of Glamis affected me in a way that was different. I felt bad for this individual. I was horrified by the way that he was treated. As an only child who often struggled with feelings of loneliness, I sympathize with the fact that this individual would spend all of his days alone. This was a new type of fear that I was experiencing. This was empathy. Towards the end of the book, John introduces us to Roswell and Area 51. Here we are given, perhaps, the most terrifying photograph so far. This strange humanoid is identical to the one that we had seen previously during the Hopkinsville Goblins portion of the book. This photograph, even as an adult, is deeply unsettling. The giant blue eyes stare at you from the page as if it can see your deepest and most private thoughts. I remember looking through this portion of the book as a child and having to fold this page backwards just so that I could read the text accompanying the image without having to see the face. This text reads, "The most publicized event in UFO history was the crash of some unknown aircraft near Roswell, New Mexico on July 7, 1947. The United States military said that they had recovered a flying disc, but the next day changed this to a weather balloon. More than 30 years later, in 1978, Major Jesse Marcel, who had helped recover the debris, said that he believed it was an alien spacecraft. The U.S. government held an inquiry that concluded that the debris came from a top-secret spy balloon. Most mysteries were hidden in Area 51, a military base in Nevada so secret that the government refused to admit it even existed until 1997. It is heavily guarded, and some people believe underground areas exist beneath the runways where UFOs and aliens were taken and examined. One rumor says that the US government has a pact with aliens that allows them to land at Area 51. Since then, the Roswell area has become the worldwide symbol of UFO activity and government cover-ups. This was strengthened by the National Enquirer running a 1980 interview with Jesse Marcel, and then a claim 9 years later by a former mortician that autopsies of aliens had been carried out in Roswell. Skeptics say that these are unreliable witnesses. They also point out that the Roswell crash supposedly happened a year after the popular science fiction movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind had stirred up the imagination about aliens. The controversy continues with both sides unable or unwilling to prove anything. These vivid descriptions and stories, accompanied with the illustration of this terrifying face, gave me nightmares. I know I'm not alone, however, as many people on Reddit have opened up about their experiences with John Wright's cryptids and other creepy creatures. Are you familiar with this book? If so, did I miss any pictures or stories that kept you up at night when you were a kid? Leave them down in the comments section below, and if you like videos like this, please make sure to subscribe.